I want to go very fast to the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 12. Begin reading with verse 4. And a traveler came to the rich man and refused to take from his own flock and from his own herd to prepare for the wayfaring man. And he came to him, and he took a poor man's lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. And a traveler came. I don't have time to read it all. I'm going to sum it up real fast. Here's the bottom line of what was taking place. David had committed a horrible sin. He had committed adultery with Bathsheba, and to cover it up, he had murdered the woman's husband, Uriah. I mean, covered it up, lied, deceived. That's adultery, murder. You talk about a mess up. That's about as bad. We read through these stories, and that was real. That really happened. And so now Nathan the prophet has been given a word from God to go to David and warn him and tell him judgment was about to hit his house. And Nathan the prophet confronted David, but he knew that he didn't just need to go in there and say, you're an adulterer and a murderer, and God's... Instead, he decided to tell David what had happened in a kingdom parable or story. It involved two people, a rich man and a poor man. We'll get to it real quick this morning. A rich man and a poor man. The Bible said, if you had time to read it, that the rich man was so wealthy that he had flocks without number, tens of thousands, thousands and thousands, and hundreds of shepherds as employees. He had sheep everywhere you could look on the mountainsides. And then there was a poor man. And this is what the Bible said in the same chapter about the poor man. He had one lamb. This lamb was more than a farm animal that lived out in the barn. But the Bible makes it very clear, almost overstating it seems, how tied to and bound to and bonded with this lamb the whole family of the poor man was. They lived in a little shack. They didn't have anything to speak of, unlike the rich man. They didn't know that world of wealth and power. All they had was that one little lamb. And the Bible said that it was so precious to that family that it didn't live out in the yard. It lived in the house. Your Bible said it ate from their table. Your Bible said that at night the lamb would sleep at the foot of the bed or even in the bed with the children and with the family. That's how much this was a precious lamb to this family. And everything changes in the story in the text that I just read you. And behold, there came a traveler to the rich man's house. A traveler. And as was the law of hospitality in Bible days, they had to help a traveler back in those days. Now, they could do that one of two ways. They could take some bread and some water and quickly hand it to them and say, continue to travel and be on your way. But he did something beyond that. The rich man, the Bible said, took the traveler into his home and fed him. And the thing that's strange about what he fed him, this man who had thousands and thousands and thousands of sheep all over thousands of acres of land, all he had to do was get one of those and feed it to the man, and it would have been a happy story. But instead, he sent his servant with a sword to the poor man's house across town, walked into the home with swords pulled, takes that precious lamb, that part of the family. It would be like your pet dog or something like that in your home that has been with your family for a long time. Took it out of the children and the family's hands, slaughtered it, roasted it, and fed it to the traveler. When David heard the story, he was enraged. He was so angry that he screamed out in the middle of the story that Nathan was telling him, who is this man? Who would do such a thing? I swear that I swear to God that he'll pay fourfold. And Nathan turned and said, you're the man. You took another man's wife. You had her husband killed, and now the sword will not depart from your house. It'll hit your house 4 times. He lost and went through 4 major battles with children in his life, almost unbearable. And my point is this, that notice that the prophet's story turned and was centered around a traveler. If the rich man had just told the traveler, keep on traveling. But he didn't do that, and instead, he invited him into his home and he started feeding him. That's when all the trouble for the rich man started, when he brought a traveler into his home and started feeding him. What a powerful, powerful revelation I want you to get. The traveler, I believe, can represent evil thoughts, wrong thoughts. And we can't help that we live in a filthy world that is constantly sending thoughts our way, bad thoughts, negative thoughts, thoughts of inferiority, thoughts of failure, thoughts of sin, thoughts of adultery, fornication, immorality. Everything the enemy does, it comes as a traveler. And the part of the story I want you to see, the mistake that this man made, is we can't help the fact that every day of our lives, the travelers coming by trying to get in. But the problem is when we open the door and we invite the thought in that we know is not right, and we start feeding it. He took it in and began to feed it. Beware of the traveler. Don't feed wrong thoughts. Starve them out. The battleground for the mind is raging. This is an all-out attempt by Satan, the prince, the power of the air, to siege the minds of a whole generation. He's using music. He's using movies. He's using internet. He's using everything he's got in his arsenal, and he's sending the traveler, and everything wrong in our life begins in tiny seed form with our thought life. He's planting thoughts of rebellion, lust, violence, mayhem in the minds of millions of people. In the book of Revelation, the Bible talks about in the end time, the Antichrist will put his mark on the forehead of his followers, 666. And I believe that he's targeted the forehead because it's symbolic of the fact that he's after the minds of the end time generation. The predominant spirit that we will fight in the last days is the one that is trying to manipulate and control our minds every day of our lives. The way that we think, the way that what we meditate on, what we allow our mind to feed on. As in the days of Noah, Jesus said, so shall it be when the Son of Man comes again. What was the predominant thing in the days of Noah? The Bible said that they were vain in their imaginations, and their thoughts were only evil continually. They're thinking on evil all the time. Having eyes full of adultery, they cannot cease from evil. They're feeding, they're taking the traveler of lust and immorality in. And we can't help it if a bird flies